Ever since Singapore's separation from the Malaysian Federation in 1965, water has been a persistent subject of dispute. River water costs free to Johor. Johor sells raw water to Singapore at 3 sen. Singapore treats raw water at ringgit 2.40/1,000 gallons. Singapore sells to Johor at 50 sen/1,000 gallons. Johor sells the water to its people at ringgit 3.39/1,000 gallons. Johor makes a profit of ringgit 3.45/1,000 gallons. The conflicts over water started in late 2000, when Mahathir Mohamad was Prime Minister of Malaysia. Under Mahathir, Malaysia requested that the price of raw water be increased to 45 sen per 1,000 gallons. On August 15 of that year, Mahathir met with the late Lee Kuan Yew and both agreed that Singapore would pay 45 sen per 1,000 gallons. According to Malaysia, the price review was needed considering nearly 4 decades of inflation and to justify a fair share of water price.
A few days after independence, the Prime Minister of Malaysia told the British High Commissioner, "If Singapore doesn't do what I want, I'll switch off the water supply." So I knew that unless I could become less dependent, at that time I did not believe I could be totally independent, but less dependent on Malaysian supplies, I would always be a satellite. So the quest began for water independence.
First on the agenda, to increase the local water catchment area for rainwater collection. Civil engineer Lee Ek Tiang was put in charge of the project. He dammed up Singapore's estuaries and established a comprehensive network of drains, canals and rivers to ensure only clean rainwater runoffs fed the new reservoirs. A new sewerage system had to be constructed across the island to ensure soiled water did not pollute the water catchment areas. But perhaps the most audacious plan Lee Kuan Yew had was to clean up the Singapore River and Kallang Basin. Since the founding of Singapore in 1819, the Singapore River had been the lifeline of trading and business activities. Over the years, the heavily used waterways degenerated into an open sewer and rubbish dump as all forms of waste were indiscriminately discharged into them. Cleaning up the black, foul-smelling river was a massive undertaking. Many businesses had to be relocated during the cleanup. The project was completed in 1987. Lee Kuan Yew's success in cleaning up Singapore's waterways and rivers meant that the island had its own domestic water supply. Singapore's National Water Agency, PUB, continued to find more ways to increase water supply. It leveraged rapid technological advances to develop new and sustainable sources of supply like new water and desalinated water to help diversify Singapore's water resources. Today, 5 new water plants can meet up to 40% of Singapore's total water demand. This is set to increase to 55% by 2060. Singapore also built desalination plants to process seawater through reverse osmosis. By 2060, desalinated water is projected to fulfill up to 30% of Singapore's future water needs. Singapore's water needs are now served by the 4 national taps: local catchment water, imported water, new water, and desalinated water. In 2008, the Marina Barrage was completed. Singapore now has 17 reservoirs from the initial 3 in the 1960s. The local catchment area covers 2/3 of the island. Lee Kuan Yew had the foresight to sign 2 water agreements with the state of Johor in the 1960s. The 2 water agreements were guaranteed by the government of Malaysia in the Separation Agreement of 1965, and the Separation Agreement was registered at the United Nations. The first agreement signed expired in 2011. The second water agreement allows Singapore the full and exclusive right to draw up to 250 million gallons per day from the Johor River until 2061. However, our water supply remains vulnerable to factors such as climate change. Singapore's quest for water security remains a work in progress. Our water story is an important reminder to make every drop count.
The water issue, Professor Jayakumar said, is critical because it has grave implications for Singapore's survival. That's why water underlies the endless vitriolic barrage from across the causeway, and it's not a straightforward matter of Singapore being more accommodating and paying a little more for the sake of good relations.
Let me be clear. It is not just a matter of money. The vital issue is not how much we pay, but how. How any price revision is decided upon. Malaysia wants Singapore to pay more for water. But the price cannot be revised at the will or dictate of Malaysia. The 1961 and 1962 water agreements were enshrined in the separation agreement, which was registered at the United Nations. They are fundamental to our very existence as an independent nation. Neither Singapore nor Malaysia can unilaterally change them. This is the root of the dispute between us.
He warned if Malaysia can unilaterally raise the price of raw water, it will breach the separation agreement. And this means that all other agreements which Singapore has signed with Malaysia will become meaningless.
We cannot allow treaties solemnly entered into to be lightly disregarded or contravened. And if we allow Malaysia to unilaterally change or alter important provision of an agreement so critical as a separation agreement, then where will this all end?
Even Malaysia has acknowledged the importance of the water agreement. Its representative to the UN Conference on the Law of Treaties said it cannot be terminated or suspended for any political reason. But a year ago, the Malaysian Premier began criticising the agreements as unequal treaties foisted on Malaysia by the British. Other Malaysian leaders took up the refrain and stoked a frenzy of media criticism against Singapore.
This deliberate raising of Malaysian ground sentiments seriously alarmed Singapore. It could easily have spiraled out of control and led to grave consequences.
But it's absurd, he added, since the water agreements were signed by the Johor State Government and the Singapore City Council. Similarly, when Malaysian Minister Rais Yatim said a local law could help scrap the agreements, Singapore was flabbergasted. So what's next? In December, Malaysian leaders spoke of referring the water issue to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. In the hope of resolving the impasse, Singapore then agreed, although reluctantly, but still held out for some hope of an agreement. But just days later, the Malaysian Foreign Minister then said that referring the issue to international arbitration at The Hague would not even be an option. But Malaysia has in effect taken steps towards arbitration. The Johor State Secretary has written to the Public Utilities Board. The Malaysian officials said the state wanted to raise the price of raw water, but PUB wrote back to say it does not accept that the Johor State is entitled to raise raw water prices, as it has lost that right.
Now it has become clear that we cannot expect renewal of future supply of water. As this removes the basis for future negotiations, we are ready to have the dispute resolved through arbitration according to the laws of Johor.
What's likely to happen is that each country will select one arbitrator, and the two chosen arbitrators will then select a third. They will then decide whether Johor still has a right to revise prices, which should have been done in 1986, and if so, by how much. Farah Abdurrahim, Channel News Asia for News 5 Tonight.
As for the water price conflicts, in 2019 Malaysian officials considered taking the matter to international arbitration if no consensus was achieved. As stated above, Malaysian officials say that the water talks will resume once the COVID-19 situation in both countries has improved. We have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Making video is time-consuming and hard work. kindly click the subscribe button and click the like button so as to encourage us to make the videos you like. Thank you and have a good day.